A very good morning to all the students of class 9th. Today we're going to start with lesson 6 from your book Moments, Weathering the Storm in Ersama. Before starting this lesson, let's first know about certain COVID guidelines. So students, this picture shows certain things which will be helpful to prevent you all from COVID-19. If you follow these, you will definitely not going to be affected by this pandemic at all. First of all, maintaining social distance, that is greeting without physical contact, maintaining a distance of 6 feet, that is 2 gaj ki duri, maintaining 6 feet physical distance. Third is wearing face cover or mask which covers your nose and mouth both. These 3 are the most important things you can do, and you have to. I think you must do these things to avoid and to prevent you, your family, your near and dear ones, your surroundings from COVID-19. We have seen that it has returned back. And we cannot take any risk. And place others' life also at risk. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth without washing your hands. So let's start the lesson. Weathering the storm in Ersama. The cyclone that hit Orissa in October 1999 killed thousands of people and devastated hundreds of villages. For 2 dreadful nights, Prashant, a young man, was marooned on the roof of a house. On the 3rd day, he decided to go to his village. Did he find his family? First of all, like you can see here, there are the 2 difficult words here. One is dreadful. That means horrible. You can just write it on top of the word, the meaning. And next is marooned. Marooned means stranded. So, the introduction, this is the introductory part of the lesson where it gives an account of the storm that had hit which place? That had hit Orissa, the coastal town of Ersama, in the year 1999. There is a person called Prashant, who is a young man. He faced the storm. So in this lesson, you're going to be studying the details of how Prashant faced this situation. He had went to his friend's place, and the same day the cyclone had hit Orissa. He was stuck there for 2 days on the roof of his friend's house. The 3rd day he decided to go back to his village to seek out his family. Now, did he find his family? When he went back to his village, was he able to find his family? So when we read out this lesson, we will come across the leadership qualities of Prashant and how he managed to take care of everyone in his own village. So let's begin. On 27 October 1999, 7 years after his mother's death, Prashant had gone to the block headquarters of Ersama, a small town in coastal Orissa, some 18 kilometers from his village, to spend the day with a friend. In the evening, a dark and menacing means dangerous, storm quickly gathered. Winds beat against the houses with a speed and fury that Prashant had never witnessed before. Heavy and incessant. Incessant means continuous, never stopping. rain filled with the darkness. Prashant was a native of a village in the coastal state of Orissa. The date was 27 October 1999 when he was on a visit to his friend after 7 years of his mother's death. He had gone to Ersama, a small town which was 18 kilometers away from his own village. He wanted to spend some time with his friend, so he decided to visit him. That day, he experienced a strong storm gathered in the evening. Furious wind, accompanied by continuous rain, lashed the place. He could see the screams of the people. He could see the uprooted trees, all crashing to the earth. Screams rent the air as people and houses were swiftly washed away. The angry waters swirled into his friend's house, neck deep. The building was of brick and mortar and was strongly enough to survive the devastation of the wind's velocity of 350 km per hour. First of all, it's important to write down the meaning of certain words. For example, here, mortar. Mortar means a mixture of lime, cement, and sand. I want you to write the meanings just near the word with the help of a pencil so that it becomes easy for you to understand when you read out the lesson yourself. So it becomes easy for you to understand this chapter. Next is swirled. Swirl means moving in a twisting pattern. Swirling motion, like this swirling motion. Yes, but the cold terror of the family grew with the crashing of trees that had got uprooted and fallen on their house, sometime in the middle of the night, damaging its roof and walls. So he could hear the screams. He could see the trees getting uprooted, destroying the houses. The water glowed with gush and swept away houses. He also saw that when he actually reached his friend's house, he experienced that nearby all the houses were being swept away by the water. He could experience the wind's velocity of 350 km per hour. The whole family was in cold terror. They were really scared what was happening. Even the whole house was filled with neck deep water. In order to save their lives, they started walking up the stairs and they went onto the rooftop of the house. They were always in deep fear that any time it might be possible that the water level may increase, or they were in fear that it might damage the house and they may get swept away by the wind, by the water. The crazed destruction wrought by the cyclone and the surge of the ocean continued for the next 36 hours. So this whole cyclone and wind blowing continued for next 36 hours, and after 36 hours it has reduced to some extent. To escape this dangerous thing, Prashant and his friends' family had taken refuge on the roof. Like I've already told you, they all decided to take refuge on the roof. Prashant will never forget the shock he experienced at his first glimpse of the devastation wrought by the super cyclone. Wrought means to bring, brought, or you can write bring. So, here Prashant has experienced this devastation for the first time. He had never thought of. He was very happy to visit his friend, but suddenly this happened and he was in deep shock. A raging, deadly brown sheet of water covered everything as far as the eye could see. When they were on the roof, they watched here and there and they could see just the muddy water, the brown sheet of water, the fractured cement houses, bloated animal carcasses. Carcasses means dead body. Dead body of animals. They could just see the animal carcasses, human corpses floating in every direction. All round, even huge old trees had fallen. And there was a blessing in disguise. Because two coconut trees had fallen on the roof of their house, and these two coconut trees had helped them from getting starved. They ate the coconuts, the tender coconuts from the trees for 2 long days, and it helped them to survive several days. For the next 2 days, Prashant sat huddled. What do you mean by huddled? Huddled means sat closely. Prashant sat huddled with his friends, family in the open on the rooftop. They froze in the cold and incessant is continuous, rain. The rainwater washed away Prashant's tears. So for next 2 days, Prashant sat there in the group with his friends' family. They froze in the cold. It was very cold. It was raining. Prashant was crying. Prashant was in tears, but his tears were washed away by the rain, by the continuous rain, by the incessant rain. The only thought that flashed through his mind was whether his family had survived the fury of the super cyclone. Was he to be bereaved once again? Bereaved means suffering from loss of someone. Suffering from loss of someone. Fury means extreme anger. So, the only thought that flashed through his mind was whether his family had survived the extreme anger, the fury of the super cyclone. Was he to be bereaved once again? Like he had already suffered in the past by losing his mother 7 years before, and now he could not bear the loss of someone anymore. So he was highly tensed about his family, how they would be, how they are, whether they had survived this super cyclone or not. So there were a lot of questions that was going on in the mind of Prashant. 2 days later, he decided that he cannot wait anymore, and he decided to take on to the expedition to his own village that was 18 kilometers away. 2 years seemed to him like 2 days seemed to him like 2 years. The rain ceased and the rain water slowly began to recede. Recede means to decrease. Okay. Prashant was determined to seek out his family without further delay. But the situation was still dangerous, and his friend's family pleaded with Prashant to stay back a little while longer. But Prashant knew he had to go. After 2 days, the rain ceased, it kind of stopped, and the rainwater slowly began to decrease. Prashant was determined to look out for his family. He couldn't wait further, so he decided, without any further delay, he would take risk and go to his village on foot. His friend's family pleaded, requested him not to go because it was still dangerous, because the whole area was filled with water. But Prashant knew he had to go. He had already made up his mind that now he cannot wait anymore, and he would go. He equipped himself with a long sturdy stick and then started on his 18-kilometer expedition back to his village through the swollen flood waters. Swollen means increased. Okay. It was the whole area, the whole place was filled with water. It was a journey he would never forget. Definitely, it would be an unforgettable journey for him, because he had never been to this situation ever before. This was the first situation that he had experienced. It was really highly shocking. He constantly had to use his stick to locate the road to determine whether the water was most shallow. So, like you can see in the picture, he's Prashant, he's carrying a long sturdy stick. He had taken up the help of the stick to find out the way, whether the surface is not so shallow, the water was not so deep. Shallow means not so deep. Okay, you can write it down here, less deep. At places it was waist deep and progress was slow. At several points he lost the road and had to swim. After some distance he was relieved to find two friends of his uncle who were also returning to their village. They decided to move ahead together. So he was going to back to his village, and the progress was slow because it was quite dangerous. As you can see in the picture, it was difficult for Prashant to move fast. He was very attentive. And after covering some distance, he was really relieved because he found two friends of his uncle who were also returning to the village, and they all decided to move together. They became companions in this long expedition. As they waded through the waters, the scenes they witnessed grew more and more macabre. They had to push away many human bodies, men, women, children, and carcasses of dogs, goats, and cattle that the current swept against them as they moved ahead. Just write down the meaning of macabre here, that is horrifying. So, as the whole group proceeded further, they witnessed some horrible scenes, which was really horrifying. They saw the human bodies floating. They had to push away the human bodies, the dead bodies of men, women, children, and the dead bodies. Carcasses means dead bodies of animals, goat, cattle, dogs, that was swept away, and they had to literally push away, and it was really horrifying. In every village that they passed, they could barely see a house standing. So as they crossed the villages, not a single house was seen. As Prashant's fear grew, he wept loudly. He was sure that his family members would not have survived the disaster. Catastrophe. What does it mean? It means great natural tragedy. He cried deeply. By looking at the horrible scenes, he was thinking about his family, and he was quite sure that they are no more. Eventually, Prashant reached his village Kalikoda. So, here the name of his village is Kalikoda. His heart went cold. Where their house once stood, there were only remnants. Remnants means remaining parts of its roof. Some of their belongings were caught, mangled, and twisted in the branches of trees, just visible above the dark waters. Young Prashant decided to go to the Red Cross shelter to look for his family. Eventually, Prashant had finally reached his village Kalikuda. He became numb. Went cold means to become numb on seeing the remains of his house. He could see just the remaining parts of the roof. He could see some of the belongings were scattered in the water. Some things were hanging on the branches of the trees. Now, the first thing that came to his mind to look out for his family. He decided to look for his family at the shelter set up by the Red Cross Society. So, he straight away went there. At the Red Cross shelter, the first person that he saw in the crowd was his maternal grandmother. Weak with hunger, she rushed to him, her hands outstretched, her eyes brimming. Brimming means full of tears. It was a miracle. They had long given him up for dead. Prashant saw his maternal grandmother. She appeared to be very weak. She rushed to him with her arms open and her eyes full of tears. She was really glad to see Prashant alive because they had also thought that Prashant would not have survived the storm, and it was like a miracle for the whole family that Prashant was alive. Quickly, word spread, and his extended family gathered around him and hugged him, tight in relief. Prashant anxiously scanned the motley. It means of different kinds. Motley means of different kinds. Battered group, his brother and sister, his uncles and aunts, they all seemed to be there. As Prashant's whole family, his extended family, found that Prashant is alive, they gathered around him and hugged him in relief. Prashant saw that everyone was worried. He scanned of different groups of the people. He saw his brother, his sister, his uncles, aunts. They all were there. They all seemed to be there. He met his siblings, uncles, aunts, and he was really glad to see them. Students will be continuing this lesson in the next tutorial. We'll be discussing certain assignment questions that I'm going to give you as a homework. So let's start. Your first question is, there is a statement from the lesson. Prashant will never forget the shock he experienced at his first glimpse of the devastation wrought by the super cyclone in the grey light of the early morning. Why Prashant will never forget the shock he experienced. The questions that you will get from your book moments would be type 1 question is like any phrase or the sentence taken from a chapter, and in a reference to the lesson, you will have to answer the question. So this is type 1. Any statement taken from any of the chapter that is in your course from this book and with the reference of the statement given from a particular lesson, you need to answer the question. It's important to read the lesson thoroughly in order to answer the questions correctly. This is your type 2 question. Imagine yourself as Prashant. Write a dialogue based answer of the conversation between you and your friend you had visited in Ersama after the cyclone. So, in this question, you're required to write the dialogues. So, this question is in the form of the dialogue writing between you and your friend after the cyclone had hit Orissa. What were you talking to each other? What were you discussing about? How you were feeling? Sharing your experiences, talking about family, whether you would be alive or not. So, just write down the dialogue based this activity kind of activity question in 150 words, like 1.5 page would be enough. So this is type 2 question. These are the type of questions that you're required to prepare yourself with. These are analytical based questions, not from your book, but something you need to think about. You need to read each and every word, each and every line of the lesson to understand it deeply and understand the real meaning behind the lines. There are hidden meanings in every word, in every sentence of your book. So read it thoroughly to understand it in a better way, to answer questions analytically, to understand questions and all the questions that are thinking based questions. Read the lesson very carefully to answer the analytical and thinking based questions. No straight questions from now on. So you need to really read each and every word very carefully to answer. Thank you so much for watching this. We'll continue this lesson in the next tutorial.